Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have our first astrology video and I'm going to talk about the Vedic conception of misfortune and karma and how can we come about a realization of misfortune in our natal chart and how can we accept it and master the misfortune in our life. So when we're talking about misfortune in the Vedic astrology or in the Vedic traditions, we are talking about the concept of Gulika. So in this video, we're going to see what is Gulika and the myth of Gulika and its manifestation in our reality. And we're going to tackle Gulika in the birth chart of Donald Trump and Elizabeth Taylor. Gulika considered to be one of the most malefic point in astrology, surpassing even that malefic and negative energy of Shani or Saturn, and eventually given Gulika the position of the most negative point in the Vedic astrology. The first encounter of Gulika as a concept can be seen in the traditional book of the Vedic astrology, the Brihad Parashara Shastra book. And for us to fathom the core of the Vedic astrology, we always have to go back to this book and study it because it contains the basic and the core of the Vedic astrology. But nevertheless, in understanding Gulika, we have to understand from the standpoint of the myth, and we have to be entrenched in the Hindu culture and the Hindu myth. So the Gulika myth finds its root in the Tamil folklore. And there is a figure in the folklore called Ravana. And when Ravana's son Indrajat was about to be born, Shani or Saturn was placed in the 12th bhava or the 12th house. And the 12th house, Saturn, is considered to be a malefic position. Ravana's, however, determined to change his son's fate by changing the position of Saturn in the 12th house, forced Saturn to shift to the 11th house. But in the process, Saturn kept his foot in the 12th house, which led Ravanas to fury, and eventually he chopped Saturn's leg. But Saturn's leg fell in the first house of astrology of Indrajat. Thus Gulika was born. So we understand that Gulika was born from the energy of Saturn. It was born from his leg. And the result of this is Indrajat suffering from short life. So in this mythology, we understand that in each there is a karmic mapping or our natal chart. There are malefic positions or malefic aspects in our astrology which are destined to happen and never to be changed. And these malefic positions are there in order to sustain a universal balance. And if we attempt to change these malefic positions or our karma or destiny, we're going to cause imbalance. And therefore, we're going to suffer from dangerous consequences. So the lesson of the myth is that we need to accept our karma, we need to acknowledge it rather than changing it from a subjective standpoint. We need to accept our malefic position and our bad karma as a cosmic order and as a cosmic law to sustain balance in our life. Thus, Gulika in astrology centers around the area of our life in which we attempt to change the course of karma and end up in much larger misfortune, misery, and frustration. It is a point where we fail to come about an awareness to our karmic path, and in the process of changing it, we bring more destruction. For example, if someone has Mars in the 12th house, you're going to see them complaining about such position because it is a malefic position. And most of them might end up feeling depressed or sad, but They need to come into acceptance with this position and its manifestation in their reality. And the more they accept it and the more you acknowledge that you have malefic and negative karma in your life, you're going to master it or you're going to control it. And therefore, you're going to bring a cosmic and objective view of life, and consequently, you're going to feel balanced. The more we reject our negative karma, the more we feel imbalanced. And this is the lesson of the Gulika myth, because he rejected his son to have Saturn in the 12th house. And in the end, his son ended up dying at a young age. Gulika has a deep connection with Shani or Saturn. In fact, it emerged from Saturn energy. And Saturn is known as the planet of the servants, the planet of the slaves, the planet of the poor, those who live in the margin of society, or the lower class of the social hierarchy. Saturn rules the physical and the material limitation, which can be illustrated in poverty, in violence or illness or illiteracy. And Saturn also rules filth, the underground, and dirt. So we can see that it has the underworld theme to it. And when we are trying to defy or combat Saturn reality construct, Saturn brings us Gulika, and therefore we suffer more. For example, there are those people who are born in extreme deprived poor conditions, and how they try to change their reality is by migrating or changing to another country or another place. And they usually do this by illegal immigration, and many of them end up dying or being shot. This is very unfortunate, but this is the lesson of Saturn. It teaches us to accept and acknowledge our negative karma and our physical limitation. And the more we are acknowledging and accepting this negative limitation rather than defying it or forcibly trying to change it, we're going to come about mastery of this negative karma, and we're going to learn more about ourselves and about life. So in order to calculate Gulika's position in the birth chart, you have to refer back to the traditional text that I mentioned before, in which a detailed way of calculation is put to the forth. But the calculation can be done automatically by a software, which I'm going to link in the description box below. And it's noteworthy that Gulika is a hypothetical planet. It does not exist. It is similar to the Uranian planet in the Western astrology, like Apollon, Zeus, Hades, Kronos. These planets do not exist in the material world, but they are psychic planets. They are visible to the psychic eye, and you feel them through the psychic vibration. So Gulika exists in the psychic world rather than the material world, and it is known as a satellite of Saturn. The first case study of Gulika would be Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was born on the 14th of June 1946, and his sun falls in the 29th degree of Taurus, and his moon is in 28th Scorpio, and his Lagna is in 6th Leo. And most importantly, his Gulika falls in the sign of Gemini, 15th degree. And the sign of Gemini is ruled by Buddha or Mercury. And the term coined to Buddha or Mercury is the speech giver. Thus, Gemini deals with speech, words, communication, and anything that has to do with the media. Therefore, Gulika manifesting on Gemini denote misfortune and malefic in terms of speech and communication. A person with Gulika in Gemini might suffer from speech impairment, bad communication skills, being misunderstood by other people, loss of hearing and speaking, cognitive disability, or ill speech. So Gulika in Gemini would manifest on different dimension and different levels from one person or another. But in the case of Donald Trump, there are certain attributes that can be observed. One of them is hate speech, inflammatory and insulting language, and being misunderstood by people. It appears that Gulika in Gemini highlights Trump's speech and language, and the world focus on this characteristic of his in a negative light, and this might lead to his downfall. His way of using language, the way he is using his words, might consequently lead him to suffer from great misfortune. And it is also noteworthy that Gemini is in the 12th house, the house of the private enemy, meaning one's own language will bring him private enemies. So people with Gulika in Gemini in the 12th house might suffer from bad communication style, and usually these people have a lot of private enemies because they are not good at communication, and usually they say the wrong things which hurts other people, and these people tend to keep their hurt secret, and they keep this hurt as a weapon in order to destroy the person with Gulika in the 12th house. So one of the most important feature of Donald Trump's Gulika is that it conjunct Venus, and this signifies failure in marriage, multiple unsuccessful affairs, and misfortune with women. And indeed, this is proven the case in Donald Trump's case. He had gained a considerable amount of hate from women due to his insulting language towards women, accumulating to a lot of women asking him to be removed from the office, and one of them is his own apprentice, Omarosa, which was his private enemy, and she recorded him and she tried to bring him down with these records. So it's noteworthy that Gulika and Venus manifest in a serial of divorces, and this indicates misfortune in marriage. And we can see this in his current marriage, that his wife is trying to isolate herself from him. And this indicates that the individual with Gulika in Gemini conjunct Venus has a bad communication with women, or they don't know how to communicate with women. And Donald's Gulika is ruled by Mercury. So Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So his Gulika is ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is in his 11th house in the Aradra Nakshatra. And the Aradra Nakshatra is ruled by Rahu. And one important thing for those people who do not know what is a nakshatra, so we have 12 rashis or 12 signs, and each of these signs are subdivided into sections, and these sections are called nakshatras, and each of these nakshatras have special meaning and have special fixed stars to them. So Donald Trump's Mercury falls in the Aradra Nakshatra, and the Aradra Nakshatra is ruled by Rahu, and Rahu is a north node, and the north node is conjunct Donald Trump's sun. So Donald Trump has Sun and Rahu conjunct in the Mrigashira Nakshatra. And the Mrigashira Nakshatra is known as the hunter, and the one whose action causes conflicts and bad consequences. So the Mrigashira Nakshatra has the story of Orion, and Orion is known in the myth as the hunter. So Orion is this brave hunter who once raped a girl, and consequently he was turned blind by her father. And after gaining his sight, he became a hunter and went hunting with Artemis. And Artemis is the goddess of hunting. So Artemis and Orion, they became the hunters in the myth, but Orion decided to kill every animal and every beast in the earth, and this angered Artemis, and Artemis consequently killed Orion. So from this myth, we conclude that there is a recklessness, fiery and macho energy found in the Mrigashira nakshatra, which always lead the hero of the story to negative outcomes because of his reckless behavior. So people with Mrigashira nakshatra, they always end up in bad situation because of their impulsiveness, or because of their macho behavior, or because of their fiery Martian nature. They are always antagonized, or they are always opposed by other people because of their behaviors or their actions. So it's also noteworthy to know that the Mrigashira nakshatra is ruled by Mars, and Donald Trump Mars is in Leo in the Magha nakshatra. And the Magha nakshatra is known for royalty, is known for kings, and is known for heritage. And when you have Mars in Leo in the Magha nakshatra, it means a passed down concept of masculinity and strength from the forefathers. So Donald Trump has a certain concept of strength and power and masculinity that is transmitted to him by his father, by his grandfathers, and by his lineage. So here we understand that there is a kind of power transferred to him by his ancestors, by his lineage and his heritage. So his material power that he possesses is actually the result of his lineage. So people with Mars in Magha feels entitled to the throne because they come from a strong heritage or lineage, and they are so proud of this lineage and their traditions. And as a result, we see that Gulika in Mercury in connection to these nakshatras indicates violent speech, harsh tone, reckless and impulsive use of language, and arrogance in one's language. So we see how Gulika in Gemini was colored or painted in a certain way by the different nakshatras existing in Donald Trump's birth. So the second study case that we're going to see in our video is Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor was Sun in 14 Aquarius. She was Moon in 22 Libra, and she had Rashi, or the rising Lagna, in 14 Scorpio. And Taylor's Gulika happened to be in 25 Libra. And similar to that Donald Trump, Gulika in Libra is similar to Gulika conjunct Venus. So they have similar attribute. When you have Gulika in Libra, it's quite similar to having Gulika conjunct Venus. And the two of them indicates mishappen and failure in love and marriage, with serial of divorces and breakups. So Libra is a sign of balance, it's a sign of beauty, it's a sign of love and tranquility and wealth, and it is ruled by Shukra, or Venus. And Venus governs the semen, it governs fertility, it governs sex, it governs the bedroom, and it governs sexuality and the earth. So Gulika in Libra would encounter misfortune in terms of love, in terms of having balance in one's life, and the affairs of bedroom, sexuality, and it will encounter misfortune when coming in terms with themes of beauty, with themes of sexuality, and themes of balance. So a person with Gulika in Libra will find it hard to accept and to come in terms with their sexuality, in terms with love, in terms of beauty, in terms of having balance in their life. And one of the highlights of Taylor's Gulika is the conjunct of the moon. And the moon in the traditional text has been said to represent the mind. And the moon, as the representation of the mind, the primary goal of the moon is to seek peacefulness. But the Gulika aspect to the moon causes disturbance and causes intensity in the mind. So the person with Gulika moon is not peaceful and is always intense or have a troublesome mind. But where does this troublesome mind falls in? In the case of Elizabeth Taylor, the troublesome mind falls in the area of love, it falls in the area of relationship, and it falls in the area of sexuality and having balance in her life. So it's also important that Taylor's moon falls in the Vishaka Nakshatra, and the Vishaka Nakshatra is known as the Scorpio Nakshatra, and this Vishaka Nakshatra is known as the opposite branches. And these opposite branches have a connotation with love, because the Vishaka Nakshatra myth involves the love story of Radha and Krishna. Thus, the Gulika conjunct moon in Vrishaka indicates troublesome mind and home life and troublesome love life. Vishaka Nakshatra is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter in Liv Taylor birth chart is in Cancer. So we see that there is connection between the moon in Libra and Jupiter in Cancer. And the ruler of Libra, which is the sign of the moon, is Venus. So Venus rules Libra, and Venus is in Pisces in Liv Taylor's birth chart, which is ruled by Jupiter. And by this, we see that Jupiter becomes a highlight in her Vedic chart. It becomes the highlight of her life. So Jupiter is in square with the moon, which indicates extravagant lifestyle, overindulgence, and it indicates strong libido and sexuality. And this can be observed in Elizabeth Taylor, love of jewelry, love of fancy items, and her multiple love affairs. And one of the highlights of the characteristic of Jupiter is that it falls in the Ashlisha Nakshatra. And the Ashlisha Nakshatra is known as the Serpent Nakshatra. So linguistically, Shlisha means more than enough, but Ashlisha means not more than enough. So by this we understand that this nakshatra possesses an insatiable hunger, the desire for more and never enough. And the symbol is a snake coiled and intertwined, guarding herself and guarding her possessions. So a person who is born with a strong Ashlisha nakshatra is a person who clinges to relationship. He clinges to wealth. He clinges to past hurt. He clinges to past traumas. They are very possessive and they are very secretive, and they are also sensual, because the snake is a sensual animal. And we should not forget that Elizabeth Taylor moon is in Libra. And Libra is a sign of jewelry, is a sign of wealth, is a sign of love. And Elizabeth Taylor is an Ashlisha native, is an Ashlisha individual. And she had an insatiable hunger for wealth, love, and money. And she always held tight to her lovers. She always held tight to her jewelry, like the coiled snake represented in the Ashlisha Nakshatra. And she also played Cleopatra, and Cleopatra had actually died by the bite of snakes. And usually the loss of lovers, the loss of wealth brings so much distress to the individual and so much misfortune. So Gulika, combined with these nakshatras, indicate that the person will suffer misfortune in terms of love life, in terms of wealth, the more that the person hold on to their wealth, the more they're going to suffer from great losses. And Elizabeth Taylor had lost so many of her husbands, either by divorce or by death. So we conclude that Gulika is actually a very important point in astrology, and each one of us needs to study their Gulika. So first you need to calculate it using the software and try to see where it falls, the sign that it falls in, the nature of that signs. Then try to examine the nakshatra that Gulika falls in and the planets that the Rashi or the sign is ruled by. And by this, you're going to come into an understanding where your malefic or where your misfortune lies, and how can you understand the bad things in life and why they happen to you. And by understanding why these bad things happen to you, you're going to master your life more. You're going to come into realization of your karma and your destiny. So this is the first astrology video, and I wish I hear your feedback and your comments. So please comment down in the comments, and like, share it, subscribe, and thank you very much.